Hello everybody, today we're going to take an updated look at a redistricting map that has undergone some changes since the last election. So today we're going to take a look at Georgia. I know Louisiana is another map we could take a look at in the near future, but this is going to be about Georgia. And the end result is not much change, so maybe we could go a little quicker through this. So first we're going to start on Ballotpedia, and this is where you can get all the background about the process. And the process in this state was controlled by the state legislature, and that is controlled by Republicans with Republican Governor Brian Kemp at the top. The previous map had already been used in the recent midterms, but has been subject to some court challenges. There were also challenges to the state house and senate, and it's a long process, but they were all redrawn. Feel free to read about the detailed process here, but the main focus here is going to be on the congressional districts. And here's the story from October. The first paragraph sums it all up. A federal judge on Thursday ordered Georgia lawmakers to draw a new congressional map for the 2024 election, ruling that the current Republican-backed plan illegally diluted black voters in violation of the Voting Rights Act. We have seen a lot of this in the courts. Usually they're from states that benefit Republicans, and if you like it or if you hate it, the judge gave legislators until December 8th to enact a new map that includes an additional district with a black majority or near majority, which would likely flip a Republican seat to Democrats. So naturally, Democrats celebrate that ruling, and a new map was passed into law and signed by Governor Kemp. So let's get on Dave's redistricting and take a look at the changes. So this first map is the one that they already used in the last election. And if we just quickly glance at the new map, and we can see it's not exactly a full redraw. Most of the changes are centered around Atlanta and the suburbs. Now, of course, that area that includes the counties of Cobb, Fulton, DeKalb, and Gwinnett, that's the major blue area of the state. Those Atlanta suburbs, that's where the Republicans have struggled statewide, and it's the main reason why the state is now competitive. But let's look at these 4 blue districts. Now, these were all won by Democrats in 2022, but if you look at the right side, this will show you the racial breakdown of the voting age population in 2020. And on this channel, I have looked at every other redistricting map, so if you've seen those videos, you know that my focus is on the partisan reflection, not the racial breakdown, but this court ruling is about the black population, so that's what we're going to take a look at. And in this 13th district, it's at about 2/3. In the 5th, it's just under 50%, and in the 4th, it's a little bit over 50. Now the 7th district, there it's down at about 30%, and there's no clear racial majority. Now if we go to the newly enacted map, the numbering has changed a little bit, but we can still see it's the same 4 districts. But in the new 6th district, the black population is over 50%. In the 5th, it's also over 50%. In the 4th, it's also just at about 50%. But in the 13th district, the one that previously had no racial majority, now that does have a slight majority, 51% of black voters. So the GOP satisfied the court ruling. They did add another majority black district, but that district was already blue. So because of that, the Democrats should not be able to flip any of these districts. Down here in the lower left, there's also a toggle so you can take a look at the precinct level voter data. That's a ton of blue. Republicans cut it up into 4 districts. I'm sure Democrats would like to get a 5th out of that, but this court ruling is only about the Voting Rights Act, and it looks like Republicans satisfied the requirements. Now, if there's any kind of a loser in this result, it's going to be the Democrat that currently represents that district that was changed to be able to add another black majority. That old district was the 7th district, and it was represented by Lucy McBath. So she's decided she's going to make a change. She's going to try to go for the 6th district. It could work out because none of the districts are overwhelmingly black at this point, but she's bounced around in the last couple of elections, running in different districts. She might even run for governor next time. But even with Republicans redrawing the map and satisfying the conditions of the court, Democrats are absolutely unsatisfied with this result. I think the bottom here sums it up pretty well. The quote here from a state representative says, "Not only are these maps unlawful, they cling to power and maintain an unrepresentative majority that does not reflect our great state. To put it plainly, the Republicans are trying to remedy their racial discrimination with partisan gerrymandering." The part I completely agree with is yes, they're trying to use partisan gerrymandering to maintain their majority. There's no question about that, but they did technically satisfy the conditions of the court, and I think Democrats are ultimately disappointed here because they would hope to get another flip out of one of these other districts. And that's where I think if we put the focus on partisan gerrymandering and forgot about the racial aspect, then that could still apply here. Plus, it would apply to both sides, and it would apply to all states. That to me is the easy win, because I don't think for 1 second the Republicans would keep a seat that's held by a white Democrat. And I don't think for 1 second the Democrats would be okay if they had a seat that had a black Republican. I know both sides are selfish depending on the state and depending on the situation. I mostly try to just stick to what's happened, but on some of these issues I am going to provide a a little bit of my own commentary. So let's see what happened in the US House in the last couple of elections. In 2020, that was a presidential year. In the statewide popular vote for the US House in Georgia, Republicans got 51% of the vote, Democrats came out with 49. That's close to a 50-50 split. Let's go ahead 2 years to the midterms. Republicans were over 52%, Democrats were under 48. And the result there was Republicans came out with 9 seats, Democrats came out with 5. And all 14 of these districts, they had both a Democrat and a Republican running. There were no seats that were unopposed. And none of these districts were actually down to a single-digit margin. So not much competition in Georgia. But what would be a fair balance here in the U.S. House? Well, the state is recently purple, but the GOP still came out on top in the popular vote for the U.S. House. And in that state, they do control the process, so I would expect them to have a small advantage. Now, everything can't be perfect. Geography and turnout, that could always affect how you draw a map and what happens in an election. But ultimately, an 8-6 map favoring the Republicans, I think, would be the most reflective. Some Democrats might say, no, it should easily be a 7-7 split. I think that could easily happen if the trends continue for the next redistricting. But Republicans easily carried this state for the first half of the last decade. So sometimes change takes more than a couple of cycles. But either way, in this map, Republicans are coming out with a 9-5 advantage. So that is going to have a Republican bias, and they're coming out with about 64% of those 14 seats. Now, it's far from the worst map out there. I don't think it's completely overwhelming. But yeah, if you're trying to be completely fair, Republicans are coming out with an extra seat here. So that's a look at what's happened in Georgia. Again, here's an AP article that talks about the federal judge accepting the new maps. And ultimately, he says the conditions were satisfied even if the Republicans wanted gerrymander to maintain their power. And that's exactly what they did. So Republicans happy they're not really going to lose anything, maybe a few seats in the state legislature, but in the U.S. House, they're going to maintain their advantage. My position has always been the Supreme Court got it wrong when they did not strike down partisan gerrymandering. I'm not at all a fan of drawing maps with the hyper-focus being just on people's race. I don't like that dynamic. There's some bad maps out there. Some of them are locked in. They're going to stand. There's some other ones that are being re-looked at. Some of them have some bias, but there's a lot of different situations out there. I do think the most widespread way to solve it is to get rid of the partisan gerrymandering. Of course, it's always going to be difficult still to work out the details with geography and to make it actually independent. But if we could get rid of some of these overwhelmingly bad maps, then I think I'd be able to handle if some of the red or blue states that have a large number of districts take a 1, maybe a 2-seat advantage. But either way, this is what we've got going on in Georgia. I try to provide an overview, but let me know in the comments, what do you think about this Georgia process? How bad was the old map? How good is the new map? Did the Republicans satisfy the requirements? What do you make of the reaction from the Democrats? How should we draw maps? How bad is this map compared to the other states? What's going to happen with Lucy McBath? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.